You'd
Sounds
think
like
I'd
you are
know how to
muted.
do that. That's
You are muted.
terrible. It's a great way to start the day. Good morning, known world. Welcome to the new show, Rekindling the Magic. We're going to be talking to different people in the SCA about how we kind of get that spark back into the society. I know it's a subject that's been brought up a lot. Hopefully, we can bring some insights with our guests. I am your host, Aslak the Awful, Laurel and Pelican out in Artemisia. Today, we're doing live from the Kingdom Arts and Sciences here in Artemisia. So we're going to have a link there for anybody that wants to come see some of our online classes. We're going to have a great day full of fun and education. So today, my guest is Baron Hightower, or as we all know, Sir Bart. Welcome, Sir Bart.
Hey, Aslak, I'm really happy to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. As you said, my name is Bartholomew Hightower. People call me Bart. I live also in the Kingdom of Artemisia, mundanely in Logan, Utah, which is the Shire of Cote d'Ciel in the SCA. I am also at the same collegium where you are. Interestingly, it's in the same building where I have my office, so I have a nice office to give to appear on your show today. Mundanely, I'm a college professor. I work for Utah State University. Within the SCA, I'm a Laurel, a Knight, and a Pelican. I've had the opportunity to sit on the SCA Board of Directors for the past few years. I currently am not on the Board of Directors. I stepped down last April. And I joined the SCA in 1980. Took a little bit of a sabbatical from the SCA to go to grad school. But as soon as I could, I charged back into it. And I've had just a tremendous amount of time coming back into the SCA, have a little more time, a little more resources to play with. One of the things I really love to do in the SCA is to create different encampments and to try different things. I've had some experience doing that, and I'm sure we're going to get a chance to talk about that today.
Yes, thank you. So we'll start with the controversial thing. As you said, during pre-show, your biggest mistake is being the Laurel of Ambiance. So do you want to clarify that so the known world knows a little bit better about what that meant?
Well, I don't think that's my biggest mistake, Aslak. I think I've made plenty of mistakes that are bigger than that.
Oh, you said it in the pre-show that might have been one of them.
It
So.
might have been. It might have been one of them. Is a large thing. We don't always create laurels for one specific thing. Sometimes we do. Sometimes someone is a laurel in, jewelry making, or a laurel in music, or costuming, and sometimes we make laurels because they do lots of things, and there's many different interests, and they seem to be able to become masters at those different things that are in front of them. I think I'm more in that second category. But I've had a lot of different kinds of projects that I've done to the SCA. I've worked on creating and bringing wooden shields into the SCA. So one of a group of people that was just pioneer of sorts in remaking and reusing wooden shields, bringing them back in. I've did a lot of banners. I do music. I've made some musical instruments and learned to play them. I just crossbows. I always forgot the crossbows. I got involved in SCA crossbows for a time, and it wasn't just enough to make something that shoots siloflex bolts at the enemy. I had to figure out ways to make crossbows that looked the part. So try to find ways to really bulk up the strings and find designs that were going to be helpful for us. So, of course, there are other people that I've looked at in the past for this. Nothing is created in a vacuum, but just a lot of different little things that I've picked up and tried and been successful at. The common theme for all of them seems to have been, if I were to describe any of it, I would say trying to take our SCA game and take the things that we use a lot and try to move them closer to what their medieval counterparts would be. And because of that, we had a startup sheet come around one day, in which someone asked, "Hey, what are you a Laurel in anyway?" And I couldn't think of any one thing, so I wrote down ambiance, and it stuck. So there I go.
And then suddenly you're being interviewed here.
So now here I am. How about that? Yeah.
So yeah, the stuff that you do, I do feel myself brings a lot of ambiance, a lot of character into the SCA, and a lot of that you share freely. I've got several pieces in my collection that you'd created that just kind of make my game look a little bit better. So why do you feel that ambiance is important?
Well, ambiance, if you take a look at a dictionary definition, it's going to be the feeling or mood that is imparted to a place, sometimes to a person, but usually we're talking about a place and the way the place makes you feel. And I think that I feel it's important that if we're going to get away for a weekend or a week to do something like recreate pre-17th century life as best we can to our abilities, then one of the great ways of doing that is to try to set the appropriate mood for what we're going to do. What kind of environment are we going to be in? And there's lots of different ways to do that. My first got into the SCA was a Boy Scout camp was perfectly fine for ambiance. And as we've evolved over the years, we become more and more complex and able to do different things with it. And so I seem to have a lot of fun doing that. So let's set the mood.
Yeah. So what are some of the elements that you feel kind of creates that for the SCA that enhance the mood and the feeling?
Well, I wrote some stuff down. Oh, there it is. I wrote a few generalities down that I probably would share. Some guidelines that I use when I sit down to create an encampment or a particular setting for a court or something like that. Try to focus on settings rather than interactions. So try to focus on the pieces that are going to be there, how those pieces fit together. I think that sometimes I talk about setting the stage. We're going to set the stage for a fun thing or an epic thing to happen, and then we're going to put the players into that stage and let them interact. But our job first is to try to create that setting. Try to design through multiple scales. As human beings, we like to take in a large picture, and then we slowly start focusing on details. So I try to design through, take a look at the big picture, where the placement of the large objects, and then sort of work my way down to smaller and smaller spaces and things where things are going to go. I want to try to plan, but not over plan. You want to start a good setting or environment, but you always want to leave room at the end for people to just organically put things into that or use them in ways that they like to use them. And so I think those are the three things I try to deal with. Focus on settings, not interactions, design through multiple scales, and always leave room for something organic to build itself into your settings. We could talk about what I mean if we want to get into more specifics, which
Please.
we're going to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we got plenty of time to get into specifics. So, and also if you're watching, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat so we can address that. So let's talk about some of your projects, the stuff that you felt really helped set settings, things that you've done that you kind of really felt added into that feeling. And I know my one thing that I can remember is walking into your camp at Harvest War that you set up, and it's always just you're just like, oh, it's just
Okay.
this nice, great setting. But what are some of your projects that you feel have done that?
Well, let's talk about that first. I think that's a great idea. I'm 60 years old now, and it just seems like every time, like most people, I had a pavilion, which I thought worked really well, and I just like sleeping on the ground. So I wanted to build a bed that would work for me, that I could sleep up off the bed. And if I have a bed, then I want carpet, and I want flags outside. We start putting the pieces together, and it got to be a lot of stuff that I would generally have to schlep from as close as I could park my car to where I wanted to camp, which usually were not adjacent to each other. Often it was tens or up to 100 meters away. I have to move the stuff, so you have to plan wagons, things like that. So I guess about 10 years ago, maybe fewer than that, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I decided to build a Vardo, which is commonly called in the SCA, or I like to call it a campaign wagon. I wanted to build a small RV that I could pull around behind me when I'm driving to an event, and not entirely have my camp set up, but have most of the camp set up, so I have to move things around. And I think I've been successful in doing this. These are I think I like the term campaign wagons. I patterned mine off of one that I found online that a guy named Paleo Tool built. That was a great design that he had, and so I started putting one together. But it's a small a wagon, sort of, it looks like a sheepherder's wagon that we see out here in the West. Quite often, it's got a rounded roof on top, rounded metal roof. Built the sides up out of pine boards, and have a bed set up inside of it, and a ton of storage underneath the bed, sort of little cabinets around. Have a closet, and I have a knickknack shelf in there. So not very much stuff that's in there, but the nice thing about it is that when I'm at an SCA, when I go to an SCA event, I go out and I hook my campaign wagon up and I drive to the event. That's how I pack. I back up, lower the trailer down onto the hitch, plug it in, hook the chains up, and off I go. And even if I'm going to a day event that is not very far away, I will still take my campaign wagon. If I'm going to an overnight event where there's no camping, or excuse me, a day event where there's no camping, but it still takes a day to get there, I'll still take my campaign wagon with me and pull up in the parking lot if I'm allowed and sleep there overnight. But then when I get to that event, all my stuff is there. My clothes are already hung in the closet. They're already clean. They're my fighting gear. I'm going to fight is under the wagon. All my feast gear is there. Everything I need is in the wagon. I don't have to pack it up. I use what I need. I put it back in the campaign wagon. I drive back home, and that's the end of it. So when I'm just doing day trips, I'll use this campaign wagon. Plus, it provides me a place to change my clothes, which is really great. I hate driving a couple hundred miles in garb, and I hate that. And I also hate driving a couple hundred miles in mundane clothes and then dressing in a bathroom. I hate both of those things. So this is like bring my own private little dressing room with me. So the campaign wagon works really well for that, but mostly I have it for some of these longer events that we go to. We have Harvest War here in Artemisia. I'm usually out at Harvest War. It's in a national forest campground. We're usually out there about a week with prepping before the war and then cleaning up after the war. Or I've got to take my campaign wagon up to Uprising, which is in Artemisia in a couple of weeks. I've been up there. And I've also taken this thing around the country to a bunch of different events. I took a summer a few years back and just hooked up the wagon and drove from one event to another and camped and set my stuff up and had a wonderful, glorious summer doing that. But when I do that, when I go to a larger event, I don't just take the wagon and take it off and set on jacks. I have other things I'll put out for that. I have a sunshade that's a Panther sunshade. It's a 14 by 14 sunshade that I could attach to the side of the wagon and set it up. I have tables. I carry 3 tables with me that stow underneath the bed. Take the legs off and stow them. I have 3 tables I take with me. I have a number of stools, wooden stools I take. I have my one luxury is a Adirondack chair, which I'll bring along. It's wooden and it sort of folds up. And I've had to re-engineer it a few times, but it's finally working really nice. And, well, it doesn't look that medieval. It's made of wood, which is nice. It doesn't look that medieval, but oh, it's so nice to sit in at the end of the day, lean back and put your little arms and put your little feet out. Oh, it just feels so good. So I try to do that. And I'll put some. So I'll put the tables out, and I'll put the chairs out. I'll set my banners up. I've got some banners I'll put out, and I've got a kitchen in a box, so I got a little chuck wagon box that I'll set out as well. And but some of the rules that I have for myself for my encampment are I don't want to have anything glaringly mundane that's out. Of course, there's some exceptions. I'm working on that. But I like to have the tables I have are made of wood. They're not plastic fold-out tables. All those would be a lot easier to use. I used to use plastic fold-out tables. I don't have any bag chairs that I'll set out. The little chairs that come in a bag that pop out. Those are also comfortable and convenient, but I've got rid of those over the years. I'm working on the ice chest. You know, I like to have a nice ice chest. I've got one now that's a neutral color, so doesn't seem too big, and I can hide around the back. I've also built like a little 6-panel Viking chest made out of wood that I've coated on the inside with insulating foam and hit it with Flex Seal. Yes, the Flex Seal from the commercial. The commercial has covered it with that, so I have a little ice chest I can have out. And I'll have musical instruments. I'll have a little sitar, a tiny little early guitar that I built, and I'll have hopefully I'll start getting my hurdy-gurdy out. Although the hurdy-gurdy still sounds pretty awful. I don't know if I'm really ready to bring that out into public. But when I created that, you know, those are the rules I have. I want to have organic things in front of me. Rather than nylon chairs, I'm going to have a wooden chair. Rather than plastic tables, I'll have a wooden table. I'll hide my ice chest. I'll build an ice chest out of wood. I'll set out wooden banner poles with silk banners on them. So I create all of these visual cues that you have when you come into my camp that says, oh, hey, this person is taking the time to create a space that we can relax in and not be distracted by things that are glaringly modern. I think that's sort of the first test that we have to do. I'm not talking about creating an enchanted ground sort of situation where everything is medieval. I don't think that we need to do that. I think it's fun to do that, and I greatly admire the people that can carry that off. But for me, it's enough to just take the opportunities that I have to start replacing the things that I need with things that are going to be more suitable for that kind of situation environment. You know, I used to have plastic tables and bag chairs, and they were stuck in my bed underneath in the campaign wagon. I'd put them out and plop them out, and we'd still have a great time. We would, but you know, one by one, you know, hey, there's a nice wooden table. I found a table at a yard sale. I saw some stools at Home Depot that were wooden stools that seemed to fit really well. You know, just one by one, I just start replacing the different pieces that are there and
I
putting
think
them
that's
together.
important. So I kind of took my cues off of Bart, and my camp it was like, oh, my tent just got destroyed. Well, why don't I just spend a little bit more and get a tent that's, you know, a canvas A? Well, it's the wedge tent.
The little wedge tent, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, you know, well, I got these chairs, but there was a tournament where you could have a chance of winning one of Yuri's benches. So now I've got a bench that sits out in front of my and just slowly, like I have a modern cot. I need to support, and the thing's small, my tent's small enough. But then I cover it with my cloaks. So if you're looking inside my camp, all my modern stuff is either in a chest or under the bed, and then it's covered in, you know. I think that's important what you're just saying, that piece by piece, not going, oh, I got to buy everything at once. It's just
that's
like,
exactly right.
The next little thing.
So something that I also work on quite a bit is lighting. Paint and light are magic. You can paint things and change the mood or how they look dramatically. Paint is cheap, and lights are actually getting pretty easy to deal with, easier and easier as time goes on. We're getting much better about our lighting possibilities that we have. When I'm out camping, usually I don't try to run off a converter or anything, so everything needs to be battery driven. I do have a 12-volt battery that's inside the wagon, but I found that the best option for lighting up the area has been Christmas lights, little LED Christmas lights that you can purchase. You can buy them. They're battery powered. They run on a couple of AA cells. You can buy rechargeable batteries if you don't want to if you're worried about creating more trash with the AA batteries. I have a bunch of rechargeable batteries that I use for these. And I've tried a couple of different versions of these. I will do I have used colored Christmas lights, little tiny LEDs that are red and blue and yellow, and I'll string those up around the sunshade. But recently I found something that I think is better, and they're these tiny little, I think they're called Moroccan Lights, but they're very tiny. They're made of plastic, but they're small balls about the size of a ping pong ball. They're usually have a metallic finish. They're perforated in a bunch of different ways, and they have little LED lights in them. And so I'll run 3 or 4 strings of that, and I find that the lighting, when you do something like that, is not garish. It doesn't yell at you, "Hey, I'm a mundane light," and provides some dull lighting. It's not terribly bright, but it's enough to see what you're putting in your mud, which is important, and sort of act as when you create a lighted space in the dark night, then it sort of acts as a gathering point to sort of brings people in. And so I'm playing with lights a lot.
I love it. Yeah, that's one thing when you walk into Bart's camp, it's just this nice little low light area, but you can see the light creates that, like, this is where you want to be, right here.
A little island, that's exactly right. Light is welcoming.
So we got a question. No, we're going to do a whole show on this, but your opinions on this. Was asked, for those of us who may want to start raising our ambience game, on a budget, what would you suggest starting with?
Oh, sure. I would start. I deal with some encampments also, some large encampments that War Go For is the one that I'm always at. I just love that war. Go down there, and I work with Dragon Ore encampment in terms of planning that and getting that set up. And we have a lot of people in the encampment that have made a significant investment in a pavilion, that pavilion and poles and all the accoutrement that goes along with that. That's a huge investment to do something like that. We also have a lot of people that want to be a part of the encampment and want to take the next step in terms of what their small camping tent. And usually the thing that I recommend for them is go get a soul pad. Soul pads, and there are a number of different companies that make tents like this. But they're a modern tent. They have a little pole in the middle of it, they have a pole in the middle, and sort of the sides come out, so it forms a round space. It's usually lower than what we see for one of our pavilions, but still gives you that sort of dome style look for that. And the color is usually a nice neutral color, like a brown or a tan or a gray. And I think it's a really good step to help to being part of the larger encampment, is get yourself a nice soul pad. And then I think after that you can work on what you did to Aslak. Get a cot as a bed, or some kind of bed that's going to be, it's not a huge investment to buy a cot, and find a way to cover it that doesn't make it look as mundane as you might expect a Coleman cot to be. So I think that's a good step to try. The next step that I would look at is a sunshade. I think a sunshade is a fantastic thing to have. If if you can't afford a pavilion, you're not looking for something that big, get a 12 by 12 or 14 by 14 sunshade from someone like Panther Pavilions, or what's the one out in Malad, Idaho, Red Hawk, or there's another tent company out there that actually creates some really nice tents. But a sunshade is usually pretty easy to cart around. It's got 8 poles, the center pole, and the center pole usually breaks down. It's not nearly as big as a pavilion. You can easily transport it in a Prius if you can find a way to get the poles on top. And that sort of gives you a space where you can sit outside and then start working on having an inviting and welcoming space that you can sit in and enjoy and prepare for the day's activities, and come back to Red Hawk trading. Very good. Nice catch. And then come back to in the evening. And then after that, then start working on, hey, let's get rid of the bag chairs and get a bench. Benches are great. Benches are easy to make them out of wood. Usually just takes a little jigsaw to build these things and screw them together. Really nice to do that. And then you're on your way.
The one I've got just packs flat, so it just goes underneath everything else. One of my little things before I got my bench, even if, or in places where I'm going to have a bag chair just because convenience or whatever, is I grab an extra cloak and throw that over the top of it. So even just little tiny touches,
Absolutely.
It's one of those things. You don't have to get expensive if you just kind of work on disguising things a little.
Well, something I found also, when you build a space like that, you create a space like that, people will pay more attention to what they bring. When you're sitting out there, a lot of people will like to bring their own chair and sit down with what's there. And sometimes they still do. Sometimes they'll bring a bag chair. That's great. I don't mind, a little folding chair. But a lot of times they'll ask. They'll say, hey, do you mind if I bring this chair here? Is that okay? Sure, absolutely. It's great. It's really not going to destroy the ambiance too much, but also you can tell that people are thinking about what it is that they have in their head, what they're bringing to the party, and I've seen a number of instances now where one year someone will say, hey, can I bring my chair? A little web chair here, and I say sure. And the next year they show up and they bring a different chair. They bring a chair that looks a little better and is going to fit in a little more, and so it's an infectious kind of thing.
Yeah, it's those little upgrade steps. So without breaking the bank, you can just kind of just a little bit more. Because I was looking again, I don't remember where, I got to look where my tent came from, but it's just this little wedge, and I looked at it and I'm like, well, if I'm getting a modern tent anywhere near this size, this is what it's going to cost me, and it's going to cost me another $100 to get a period level tent that fits in wherever I'm at. So yeah, just when things start wearing out, you're like, I need to switch that. So it's good. So one thing I really like, if you will talk about, is your knives.
Oh, yeah, I was out at Gulf Wars, and someone I saw, I think it was Camric, had a knife, and he gifted it to someone, another friend of mine, Lady Flora. And I thought that was just a really cool thing that you could, to make a knife and to give it to someone. And so I sort of tried doing that. And my knives are not the most accurate thing. I've made some knives that are really quite beautiful, and I'm working on making them more and more accurate over time. But a lot of people ask for a knife, especially in around the Shire. We live in a small Shire, and we love all of the people that are in the Shire, and we're getting new people in all the time, and they want to become. They offer the first award that you get in the SCA, of course, is your award of arms. And one of the traditions that we have, of course, we're not unique in this, is we give people a knife to carry around with them when they get their award of arms. I think it's just a nice thing that we do. And I don't have one here with me, and I don't have one on my belt either because I gave my last one away. Now I have to make another one here. But I have forged knives, and I have bought knife blades, little Scandi grind blades that you can buy online. and I'll put them on a handle. You can. It's not difficult to do this. I'll use an antler. We have a lot of antler in my part of the country. A lot of elk antler will fall on the ground. People will collect. You can buy from reputable dealers. Doesn't hurt the elk when you do this. The antlers are going to fall off the elk. Anyway, people usually pick them up off the ground when they do that. And there are different locales at different ways. But I'll take a piece of antler and I'll cut it down and I'll sand it to the right shape and I'll polish it up and get some original polishing compound and put nice polish on there. And usually end up epoxying this thing together with some pieces of brass on the end and the blade just shoved in and epoxy into place. I will do that and then I'll build a scabbard around it using some vegetan leather and some brass trim and come up with an interesting little hanging system. You can take a look at some extant examples that are out there to do that. But another thing that I also do, because it takes that's a long process. It takes me about a week to build a knife if I'm doing it that way. And we get, it always turns out that we end up with someone we know where someone's getting an award of arms. Like tomorrow, someone's going to get an award of arms. And so we don't always have the time to do that, and like to have a bunch of these sort of ready to go. And so I've started using Opinel blades. Now I've got one here. This is Opinel is the sort of the quintessential French pocket knife. Just happen to have it on my desk because I use these things all the time, just as my normal everyday pocket carry. It's got a beechwood handle on it. Camera. It's got a beechwood handle on it. This one still has the logo on here that stands off pretty easily. It's a very light knife, and it will keep it in one place. It's got this interesting locking mechanism on it. It's got this rotating cap. It can lock good. It can lock closed, so you can't open it at all. Or you can twist this little guy here, and you can open it up. There we go. Open it out. It's pretty close. Looks like a candy grind, but it's not. Opinels are triangular, not a triangular grind on the blade. They're thick on the back. They have a thickness on the back, and they grind down to a point on the front. And it's just one plane. It's not hollow ground or anything like that. These things are really great for carving up an apple, or doing some whittling, or carving vegetables for dinner. They're a great knife to have, and they're really cheap. They're not cheap. They're inexpensive. It costs $15 to $20 for a number 8 Opinel. That's what I get, and it's a great carbon steel blade. It looks reasonably good. You can take the beechwood handle and sand it down and carve things into it and put little Viking dots on it, doing whatever you want to do to it to decorate it up. Put little black stuff in there. It's a really easy and fun thing to deal with. And then we'll build a leather a scabbard for this. And if someone, I'll plug myself. If someone is interested in seeing the scabbards that I make with these Opinels, or seeing the campaign wagons I built 2 campaign wagons now, or some of the other projects, I encourage you to private message me on Facebook, tell me who you are, and ask to be my friend. And I try to be a little careful about who I friend, because so much is out there. But just tell me who you are, what you're interested in, and I'll include you in the friend zone, and you can take a look at some of the albums I have up on Facebook, where a lot of this stuff is there. So, does that help, Aslak? Is that?
Yeah.
Do you have yours on?
I don't have mine on because mine had that little blade malfunction, so it had an issue, so I got to get it fixed.
Give it back, and we'll put another blade in there for you.
But yeah, I mean, almost everybody in the Shire has got one of those. It's
a fun thing to have around. It's a useful and utilitarian. It's good to have a knife you can carry around and whip out and cut a vegetable with,
Yep. And I've got one of the knives you were just showing too. So before I even knew you had them, I got a hold of one and went, I like that. And that ends up most times in my camping kit. And so, yeah, again, I love that kind of stuff. And I'm the same way. I usually try and have an extra knife or two in my collection somewhere. It's like, oh, the next day, guess what? We're gonna. And then that happened to us at our last event where it was like, oh, these people are gonna get their award of arms, and I'm like, I just happen to have a spare knife with me. Yep, I just happen to have a spare knife. So
I can like back there, like where can we find those guys? Yeah, I see it now. Good job. So I'd like to talk about something else if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And that's my experience with Dragon Ore down at Gulf Force.
Please, that's legendary.
So we create this encampment down there, and we'll generally have we have a minimum quota that we need to meet every year. I think it's 25 people within the encampment, but we always really blow way over that. We usually have 45 to 55 people are in this encampment. And so trying to figure out how to put them all together and to create space for them and to create a nice camp environment has been one of my ongoing projects over the last few years. And I gotta say that I do a lot of planning for the encampment in the months before we have camp. I gather information from their pavilion, what the size of their pavilion is, if they have a sunshade that's attached to it, and I've created over the years a system, a way to map things out. Of course, a lot of people do this. I'm not the only one that does this. I've picked PowerPoint as the tool that I use to plan out the encampment because PowerPoint has some really. First of all, I can get it anywhere. I can have it on my iPad. I can have it on my computer. I probably could. There's probably a version on my phone if I had to. I've never tried using it on my phone, but you can plop shapes down, circles and rectangles. You can format a shape to change the color and the outline. You can change the size of the shape. You don't just have to not just drag or draw, but you can actually go into the format pane and figure out what the exact dimensions of that shape are. I usually use a scale of either 1 inch equals 1 foot if I'm doing planning for one thing, or typically for the map, it's 1 inch equals 10 feet. And so a 14 by 14 pavilion or a 12 by 16 pavilion will be 1.2 inches by 1.6 inches. And I can get the relative size of all of them. I take satellite photos and I map out very carefully. I can drop a satellite photo onto PowerPoint and make it transparent and build a map on top of that, know where all the buildings are going to be. And over the years, I've gotten very, very accurate. So I know, even though it's an odd shape, I know to the foot how much space I have down there. And so we'll get information from the people that are camping there. I harangue them incessantly to tell me if they are coming or not and what kind of tents they have. And so I'll put those down there. We'll start planning the tent. We usually are planning where the pavilions are going to go. We usually plan for an open space around our long hall and maybe a couple of other little courtyards that are sort of filtered through there. So I'm trying to use I'm using the concept of I'm going to create a big, broad thing. I just start working down into little details. Here's a little courtyard. Here's a little courtyard. Here's where people can go to get this and relax. We usually have 2 or 3 little hidden spaces around the camp where people can sort of draw their chairs up and one large open public area where people can come. We have a large fire pit down there that we're going to be able to use for that. So I use PowerPoint to plan for that. There's a whole nother epic story about the spreadsheet that I use to start planning meals. I've actually got down to the point where I've got several standard meals that we're going to do. Like we have spaghetti night, or we've got somebody's doing a taco night. So I know what all of the different ingredients are. I've found all the ingredients we need on Sam's Club. And so as people sign up to say, I'm going to go this meal, I'm going to go that meal, go to this meal, it automatically starts tabulating who's going to what meal. So we know how many people are going to the meal. And then it starts adding in how much stuff we need to buy from Sam's Club in order to run the meal. So by the time I get there, I fly across country this thing. By the time I get there, all I have to do is look at the spreadsheet that says, oh, buy 2 packages of this, 1 package of this, 2 packages of that. I'll go to Sam's Club website and I'll do a click and pull, their option is, and I'll literally drive up to Sam's Club, sit in my car, and 5 minutes later, someone brings out all the groceries and puts them in my car for me. It's like heaven. It really is. Of course, sometimes we do special things, for someone's doing a crab boil, let's do a period meal, and that's really great. But we can get a lot of the meals taken care of. So we do that for planning. And then something else that I've done, which is germane to what your show is here, that we've been building cabins out there. One of the really unique things about the Gulf Horse site is that large portions of the site are dedicated to encampments that are there all the time, to the point where they build fences, you have to be able to see through it, but you can build like a little palisade fence. We in Dragonor, we built a long haul, which is a pole barn that we slowly enclosed over the years. We built a shower house, and recently we started adding some cabins out there to stay in, and it was just a really fun experiment for me. Talking about taking the next step, once you've got your pavilion and your campaign wagon, and then the next step, of course, is to build your own permanent cabin out at an SCA site. It's like a dream come true for me to be able to do this. I had no idea what to do, how to make it happen. So I started with PowerPoint. I started putting shapes down on PowerPoint. What are the dimensions I'm looking for? I started measuring furniture and putting that into my PowerPoint. How am I going to make this space? How am I going to make it everything fit where I want it to go? How big am I really going to need? Where am I going to put a bed? Do I need a second story for a loft or something like that? How are we going to do this? How do I want it to look at the very end? So I started planning on PowerPoint, construction that we were going to use for this, and I started looking at materials that are they going to be available for us in the area, available for me in the area, and then slowly work it from there. And the first cabin I built there took a couple of months to build a cabin of dedicated effort to do that. Finding where everything was, where I was going to get the roofing materials, where the windows were going to look like. Put a lot of thought into it. But then after I built the first cabin, then I had learned a lot of things that we could use again. We made some design decisions, and the design decisions that we made were things like, this is the color paint we're going to use. There's an off-white paint and there's a brown paint, right? And those are two basic colors that we want to build them. We're going to use a little fauche work style that looks like a faux Tudor building with like the wattle and daub with timbers. Of course, can't afford to build the timbers and do all that work without spending an inordinate amount of time there. So we chose, a shed style construction that uses fiberglass or fiber panels, sort of like masonry fiber panels that look like stucco. How to put those in there, and then put trim boards up, paint those brown color, and then we sort of work from there. We looked at roof line was always going to be a 45-degree angle, like 100% grade pitch. Everything is a nice steep roof pitch. Picked a color for the roof. Looked at windows. We picked a window that was it's not really a window. It's called a barn sash. You can buy these wood windows with panes of glass in them. That is just the window part of it. Built the windows out of that, and learned how to build a door. And once we had all those elements together, then we could turn around and say, okay, if you want to build a cabin out there, then here's what you got to do. You got to use the same colors. You got to use the same roof pitch, and the same roofing materials. You need to build it on this is a decision we made later. You need to build it on a 4-foot scale. So all your dimensions were multiples of 4, like 8 by 16, 8 by 12, or 12 by 12, or 12 by 16. Those are the sizes that we use. The reason we do that is because so many building materials come in 4-foot widths. That makes it a lot easier for us to design and build these things without having to do a lot of extra cutting, makes the construction go a lot faster. So we built we got 3 cabins out there now. And then we turned around and took our long haul, talked about reusing the same elements for design. We took our long haul, which was feeling its age, and we reskinned it. We put the same color roof on it. And we took the outside and we turned it into that same fauchework style that we used for the cabins. We did the same for our shower house, which looked really. It was nice to have a shower, but it looked really ugly. But put some paint on it, put some trim on it, put the colors the way we want to. We ended up putting a deck around there, making the stairs look a little nicer. And all at once we got cabins, we have a storage shed, we've got a shower house, we got a long hall, and they all look the same. They all have the same sort of design features that are in them. And when you do that, people walk in there and they see all that is sort of in the background. They see the pavilions in the front, they see the soul pads over on the side, and you've got a little village going on out there. It's just absolutely incredible, the kind of stuff that gets put together. And people come into camp, and it's definitely got a vibe now that we didn't have before. And we didn't. Well, okay, there was a little bit of money that went into that one. That was not for beginners to do that. But little by little, this is over a period of 5 or 6 or 7 years, just sort of adding all of these different elements in there, and then all slowly starts to come together. People get excited about that. Now it's we think we've got a really beautiful encampment out there. We can't wait to get back there and be in each other's company and really enjoy the war.
Yeah, I've seen pictures. If you haven't seen this little encampment that he's talking about, I'd check it out. So
same thing. Friend me on Facebook, tell me who you are, and I'll show you all the albums that I've got that has this stuff in it.
Awesome. So so it looks like we got through most of my questions. Is there anything else that you can think of that the populace in general, collectively or individually, can do to just kind of start? What is things you like seeing that creates the ambiance? Not necessarily camping, but just in general.
Yeah, I like to see people use a nice wooden shield on the field. I think if you're a fighter, then and you're ready to step it up, you got your Acer helm, and you've got everything. You got your nice little laminar scale. You have to cover up the zoom bang now. I think a really great step is to build a wooden shield, and you can build these things so that they last. I have wooden shields that have been out there for 8 years of rough use, still not that heavy, not really a heavy shield. Still like people using these things. They're so much fun. They add so much ambiance to the fighting field because you don't get that slam of aluminum shields that you get. I'm not gonna diss too much aluminum shields too much. They're great. A lot of people use aluminum shields. There's some definite advantages to having them. You can leave them out in the rain; they won't warp. But a wooden shield is really going to set your kit apart. I would definitely recommend a wooden shield. And the second thing I would recommend, if you're ready to take the next step, is get yourself a nice period set of shoes. That will really change your game also. Most people, now these days, period shoes are not that difficult to come by. Most people are wearing them. A lot of people are. If you aren't or you can't, that's not a big deal. But a nice period looking set of shoes you're going to get a lot of mileage out of those in terms of sort of upping your game. Other than that, get yourself a hat, learn to play an instrument, learn to play a drum, learn to sing a song. All of those things really add up to doing this.
Yeah, that's one thing I very much enjoy. You and your sons and some of your apprentices are good at that. I love when I'm walking through an event and somebody's just, they're not big performing. They're just kind of tootling away on their instrument or singing quietly and I really, that just sets it for me. It could be the most modern setting, and if somebody's just kind of playing a periodist tune and just relax, it brings me in. I love that.
So that's a really good point. We started a project. I did, and my son sort of followed up, and one of my associates, I have an apprentice who's also my squire, followed up on this. But we learned to build and this we call a citole, C-I-T-O-L-E. They're not too difficult to build. It's one piece for the back and for the neck and the pegboard that's up there. There's several different ways of putting these together. It's got a soundboard on it. We usually order like a ukulele soundboard for it, like a tenor ukulele. We can use a nice soundboard for that. So put together these instruments. It's a cigar box guitar. Just basically sort of put these things together, and you can, we pretty them up and we put little inserts in them. Excuse me. There's a couple different tunings. I've got a tuning that I use I really enjoy. My son uses a ukulele tuning, a mandolin tuning for his because he already knows how to play the mandolin. He had to work with the strings, figure out what strings we needed for it. But we learned to play these things and learned a few. We don't have a huge repertoire, maybe 5 or 10 or 15 songs that we know. Then we'll do that in Otto. My square Otto is a very talented guitar player and a talented musician, and he just likes to get out there and sort of tootle around on his and play little medieval ditties. And sometimes it's a song, and sometimes it's just him playing around and bringing that instrument in and playing around the campfire just as we're talking, doing things. I believe everyone's got a different theory about barding. I don't like to compete very much. I think that musical performance in the SCA does the same as ambiance. It sets a mood. So if you just have it included in your scene or your setting, you don't need to draw huge attention to it. You don't need to congratulate someone every time they play a new ditty on their instrument. Just let it be there and flavor the atmosphere that you've got, and that really does add quite a bit to it.
Yeah, it was actually so I'm a competitive type. I really like getting into competitions. Whether or not I actually win is irrelevant. I just it gives me a chance to get out there and do it. But because of Bart talking about that, I actually came with a thing that I've been working on getting going in Artemisia, where if you wear a harp, a pin, or a medallion, it indicates that I'm ready to perform for you. That if you need some more atmosphere, please ask me to do something for you. And it's just another way to add a little more, people are kind of sitting around, things are kind of at a lull, know who, enjoys performing without the competition, without the big, it could just be the two people. So I really like that. The spontaneous ones are better, but it's kind of a way to get it more mainstream, because I saw a lot that only competitions are where you see the bards, and this way it brings them more out. So it's something I encourage everybody to come up with an idea on how to do that in your kingdoms, because I relish a chance to perform. So anytime somebody goes, "Oh, I see you've got the pin on. Can you do something for me?"
So you'll know you're doing something right when someone comes up to you, maybe years later, and they say, "Hey, I remember this thing that you did at this particular encampment," and that was a really magical night for me. That really, was one of those magic moments that I keep in my heart and think about things. I had someone tell me that just the other day for you remember at Uprising? I think you were there. We had like an open mic night.
Mm-hmm.
We had a tavern. We set up a tavern. Baroness Florin, Baron Aggie, they're here in the Ogden area. We used as the centerpiece of our encampment a large pavilion that they had, and we put a sunshade out in front of it. We put tables out underneath it, had some lighting overhead, subdued lighting so they could sort of see what, so people can buy, they get some food. Then we set up these carousel pavilions, which I've got. We've sort of set those up around there in a semicircle. And we created within our encampment this nice little courtyard space. And then we built this stage out of 2x6s and a couple pieces of plywood, an 8x8 stage, just slightly raised up a little bit. And we put some closet dowels up with a little crossbar, and we ran some Christmas tree lights on that, just to basic, nice, warm, yellowish Christmas tree lights, little tiny little Christmas lights. That was before batteries, so we had to have a generator. We used my truck, which was parked out behind all the tents, with a little converter box on in order to power those. That create nice subdued lighting, a place where people could come in and sort of be protected from all the other elements that were out there. And we let people one by one just go up there and just sing their song or tell their story or do their little thing. We had space out in front of it on the grass where people could set out carpets and things like that. And we had no idea if it would work or not. But it did. People came and they sat down and they started talking and singing, and more people showed up and more people showed up. And soon we had just a beautiful little party that was going on down there, where all we did, we just created this space for it, created a stage and some lighting, a little bit of food, nice and closed space, and people felt comfortable playing around with it. It's great.
Yep, I very much remember that because I went through my repertoire of what would fit on this stage that could be visible, and I could kind of. So yeah, I very much remember that. And then mostly I just sat around and ate the food, but I got up on stage a couple times, and that was a great environment. So
yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was just good basic fun.
We're gonna have to do that for Harvest War again. I'll chat with Google about that. So
again, my name on Facebook is Bartholomew Hightower. You can PM me if you'd like to get on there. If you haven't seen any of my albums, and then I'll get you hooked up for all that. Okay.
Very good. So, any final words, shout outs before we wrap this up?
Gosh, like I said, people have influenced me so much in what I have done over the years. Count Rafe, I guess now he's Duke Floki, got me onto wooden shields, and Max out in Kaid just loved the crossbows that he did, and used some of those ideas and designs and try to add my own to it. For knives, looked at people like Camric and the cabins. There's so many wonderful, beautiful permanent structures out at the Gulf War site and Penzic to sort of draw inspiration from that have inspired me over the years. And so just, trying to pick up on one of those things one at a time has been a tremendous amount of fun for me in the SCA.
Great. As for me, I'm hoping that people watching this, or they're getting ideas about other ways to rekindle the magic. That's what we want to bring in. Ambiance is only one part of it. So I am looking for guests for my show. I do have some shows coming up with Maestro Vidoma. We're going to be talking more about how to do camping and ambiance on a budget. And then we also have one coming up with Tiana. We're going to talk about, she wants to get a Laurel in napping. And
I think she's well on her way too. She's really good at it.
Excellent stuff. And she's created these nice spaces. I want to talk to her about that. But if you know somebody that I should be chatting with, please let me know. Online, I am Jason Porter on Facebook. Or you can just look up Aslak. I think I'm the only Aslak in the SCA that I know of, and it will pop up on Facebook for you. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm not sure what the next upcoming show is. But check out Kal-bardr's Corner. You can find all the classes the shows that are coming up. And thanks for coming. And thank you once again, Bart, for being my first guest on this show.
Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Till next time, see what you can do to rekindle your magic.